What's going on, YouTube? We got another video this week because I got the time. And, well, you know, this thing ain't brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, World of Warcraft, Minecraft, any of those fun games, because we don't have sponsors. We're too small for that. So it is just a discussion on that business of steel armor, your favorite thing in the world to talk about. So we have several examples of steel armor to consider today. And as you can see, we've got some of the common ammunition types that are found here in the United States. With that being said, little disclaimer here. I realize that you are on a side quest in whatever, you know, first-person game that you're playing, and you've got armor considerations, and you, like me, have spent a whole lot of time on YouTube doing your research and your homework, and there's all kinds of opinions about steel body armor. Will it kill you? Will it save you? Is it better than or worse than the alternatives that are out there on the market? Well, that's the fun question we're going to discuss today. Now, whether or not we can answer it, that's a totally different matter. And I'm not going to sit here and claim to be the expert. No, I'm not going to be shooting at these today because I have them in my inventory for a reason. As you may have, you know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I do use steel armor. And steel armor has its positives, it also has its negatives. So the first thing that we want to discuss is, what is this? This is all AR500. And these are what I would say from different generations of AR500 that I've purchased over the years. They are all level 3 plus, which means they are rated to pretty much stop everything that you see here. Now, 30-06, which is this guy here on the end, this is not armor piercing. They don't really speak about 30-06 in the ratings category, but with this being a soft tip, these plates would likely stop 30-06. We'll move it out of the picture just for the time being anyway. So we've got 9mm, same thing for 45 ACP. You've got M193, you've got some green tip, some run-of-the-mill Soviet stuff, and 308. 3 plus body armor. Now, you can get into the NIJ stuff if you want to. That is what it is. But these plates here, under most circumstances, will stop all of these threats. Where things get a little interesting is with that M193 there. If you start getting over a 20-inch barrel and the velocities are where they need to be, well, your steel plate, even at 3 plus, is going to be Swiss cheesed. That's just the nature of the beast. When you get into ceramics, you have a little bit more threat protection there, but we'll get into that too as we have a conversation here. So, if you're like me, you've spent time watching those videos on YouTube, and, well, you know, there's different opinions. Will these things get you killed from spalling, or as I call it, fragmentation? This is an area, guys, again, where we get into the fun of terminology in the gun community as far as things like magazines and clips and who's going to lose their brain if you use the correct or incorrect term in a conversation. And likewise, the subject of spalling as opposed to fragmentation when it comes to body armor. It's kind of like the whole fully semi-automatic thing that's out there. We just have terminology that we use and we do our best to understand it. So we're not judging any of that here, but spalling is technically when your body armor fractures and the armor pokes holes in you. Fragmentation is when the projectile from the round shatters on a harder surface than itself, and you get little pieces of shrapnel that go into all kinds of fun places. Now, with that being said, we'll probably use those terms interchangeably because why not? I'll do my best to just kind of speak of it in terms of spalling, since that's what most people just talk about on videos anyway. So, is spalling or fragmentation an issue with steel armor? And the answer is technically yes. It's also an issue with other forms of armor too. And likewise, penetration issues with body armor. Again, guys, here, I mean, you're looking at these. As you can tell, these have never been shot. Now, what they are rated for, that's one thing. whether or not any of these plates happen to have some form of a manufacturing defect in them. They did not shoot these in advance to test them before they sold them to me. And likewise, any body armor that you buy, they are not pre-shooting it to see if it's going to hold up to the threats that they claim they are supposed to hold up to. Lemons happen whether you're buying a car or body armor. So there is always in the realm of possibility that something that these are rated to stop, they won't stop it. So that's the first point that we want to get out of the way. Ratings are one thing. Reality is another. The same thing goes. Will these catch fragmentation from a projectile? Technically speaking, they will, to a point. Now you'll notice there are some differences here between these two plates. One looks a little bit thicker. And the reason for that is because this guy here has the frag lock buildup, whereas this guy here does not. That makes a difference, guys. That makes a difference. And even then, this coating, whether it's the base layer, because this base layer here is meant to protect the steel from elements. Will it catch some fragmentation? Yeah, it'll catch some for maybe the first round or two in certain situations, but it's really not intended to do that. This stuff here with the buildup is going to do that better. But even still, after multiple rounds, this stuff is going to begin to come off of the plates and it's going to lose its effectiveness. Likewise, when you're dealing with ceramic, generally, they test up to 6 rounds on that. At that point, that ceramic's getting really compromised. After any number of rounds hitting any form of body armor, your degree of risk for injury and or death from incoming rounds increases. And let's be totally honest, guys. If you're getting shot more than 6 or 7 times, you did something really not smart. So yeah, that's just the nature of the beast. And likewise, we have to remember here, body armor is not a force field. It does not give you invincibility. It protects a small section of your body from a particular angle from very specific threats. Concussion blasts, your body armor is going to be just fine. You aren't. So this is just, I get a little flustered when I see some of these arguments going on because these do what they are designed to do. They will stop rounds up to a point. You're eventually going to get the effects of those rounds hitting. And what I will say, in watching a lot of YouTube videos, you see a guy, he'll grab a plate, like usually it's something like this, just a baseline, base coat, 3+ rated piece of armor, stick it in a plate carrier, go out 50, 60, 100 yards and just start popping rounds off at it. And they usually start with, something small like a 22 long rifle, and then they work their way up to 9, and then maybe they put the 9 in a carbine, and then if they have 45 ACP or 10 millimeter, or they'll take a shotgun. And by the time you start getting up to the bigger rounds, half of the buildup, even on the base layer plates, has already been compromised. And at that point too, once it's been compromised, you're starting to get fragmentation into the plate carrier vest. Once the plate carrier vest is then compromised, those fragments are just going to go. They're just going to go. And so I realize that it's not practical to order 1,000 plates and 1,000 plate carriers and have, multiple thousands of rounds to test each and everything and come to a scientific conclusion of what the effects are on all of these things. We don't have that sample to work with. What we do know, though, is that all of these things degrade after they start getting a number of hits. The steel will be fine, but, you might not be. So, that being said, if you're going to go with steel, you got to get the buildup on there. And again, you got to remember that after a couple hits on that thing, you got to replace it. And likewise, your carrier is going to need replaced because once that's compromised, anything that it might have caught is not going to catch anymore. Right? Right. So, What are the challenges then when you get the buildup coat? These things are heavier. They're a lot heavier. Again, I've bought these over the years, so I don't remember the exact weights, but this was the first plate that I purchased a good number of years ago. And that was state-of-the-art AR500 steel at that time. That thing weighs a ton. Then these came along. Ooh, advanced lightweight with the advanced shooter cut on there. They're lighter, still heavy. And as you can see, I don't have buildup coat on there. And there's a reason for it. And likewise, I've now gone to, I don't know what they call this now, like an A2 or an A3. This was the swimmer's cut when I purchased it. And this is like 5.5 pounds. And as you can tell, again, there's no buildup coat on that. And that's because I use spall guards. These have a aramid, I don't want to call it Kevlar because it's probably not Kevlar brand, but type material that will catch fragmentation. But even these, after you get enough holes punched in it, things are just not going to go your way. But this is what I put on these types of plates. If you're going to run plates without the buildup to save a little weight, and this thing's really light, so it's, this is a little bit of a way to save some weight if you're not going to get into some of the weird polyethylene type materials that are out there these days, which again, you have threat level risks with the green tip on some of those. This is a great way to kind of protect yourself if you're going to, just use the base coat on the plates. So yeah, these will stop what they're rated to stop. You can add a little protection with a spall guard on there to catch some of that fragmentation. Are you going to die because you use steel armor in the field? And people will kind of make this claim. And the answer is, well, as long as, you don't get shot somewhere that isn't steel and the things that are in place to make that steel safer are there, you should be okay. There are, of course, hazards. And I've talked about this with some of the other armors because, again, let's think about how YouTube testers typically do these tests. They're taking these types of calibers, they got these things out on a post, maybe strapped to a mannequin, and you're taking a dead-on shot where this is going straight into the plate. And that's best case scenario. But as you know, or hopefully you know, you're not always going to have a threat face on. So, your armor can be on different angles. I watched one YouTuber that set one of these up on an angle like that, shot at it, and the bullet projectile hit, rode up it, blew up the watermelon on top of it. And the argument there was, if this thing hits you on an angle, it's not going to stop the projectile, it's going to shoot in the face. That is a possibility with any kind of armor because angles are a reality. Whether, you want to talk blacktop on the ground, cement on the sidewalk, brick structures on a wall. If these things hit them on an angle, they can turn, ride it. And same thing can happen with any type of body armor. Doesn't matter what the material is. Angles are a reality where these things can ricochet around. That's just, again, it was an interesting video, but at the same time, I kind of had this question in my mind of, what are the likelihoods of you taking a shot with this thing? Like you'd have to be like taking a nap against a tree to be on that angle for something to come in and strike it that way. You're more likely to be angled down like that or angled off to the side, in which case, again, when you start talking tactics, that's why you keep space between you and the people around you when you're in the field. You don't bunch up, you don't get tight on each other. One, because, well, if you're in a big blob and a frag comes in, well, now you're all part of the fragged blob. But yeah, you need space. You need space. There are very certain circumstances where you need to group together. And that's usually crossing a street. But anyway, that's a different conversation another time. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this today to let you guys know that there is no 100% effective body armor out there. Every type of armor you purchase, whether it's a piece of Kevlar, 3A, you don't know if that thing's going to actually work or not. Defects happen. Same thing with steel, same thing with ceramic, same thing with the poly stuff. They're rated for certain threats. If you encounter a threat that's greater than that rating, then, you might have a bad day. You can get shot in the leg. So, there's all these different variables that are out there. Some body armor is better than no body armor. The important thing is to understand the risks. And so when people start, flaming on steel, just remember, ceramic, it's got limitations. Polyethylene has limitations. Steel has limitations. Angles are a reality. Build-up materials can only take so much. Additional guard systems, catchers, can only do so much. Plate carriers can only do so much. If you need armor, get what you can afford. Save more if you think there's a better option on the market that can do more for you. There's some really good hybrid stuff coming out right now that's not too bad in price, that has better threat level protection, helps mitigate some of that fragmentation and or spalling. But again, guys, some of these videos that are out there get people really fired up. It's unfortunate that we get into these flame wars about these things because, again, some armor is better than no armor. Hopefully, if you're in a situation where the end of the world is here and there's chaos everywhere, or Chinese paratroopers are flying in or something, you got something and it helps save your life. I mean, we hope that in those chaotic situations that the armor will do what it's supposed to do. I suppose a couple little pieces of fragmentation is better than nothing, but or not better than nothing, better than holes in you. Yeah, there's just a lot to consider with this stuff, guys. And I wanted to make this video to kind of assure you, especially you steel guys that are out there like myself, the steel plates do what they're supposed to do. There are inherent risks with them. But if you had bought something else, don't make yourself, get comfortable or complacent thinking that because, I have ceramic or because I have polyethylene, I'm safer than the guy with steel. That's just not the case. That's not the case. We live in a very messy world where nothing is perfect. And, so you got to factor all these things in. You have to factor them in with the tactics as well. Your body armor that you're wearing, regardless of what it is, you got to keep spacing. You got to be mindful of where the hard surfaces are, because projectiles flying at thousands of feet per second, they do all kinds of fun things. Anybody who's ever been hunting, that full well like what a twig can do, or a little branch somewhere, this thing's flying along and bloop, kicks it sideways or whatever. Things like that do happen. So my advice to steel guys, get the buildup. Realize that after a couple rounds, that buildup's going to start falling apart. It's not going to. So again, you got to have, a backup or something of that nature if you find yourself in that situation in your inventory. If you don't want to get the buildup, you got to get some kind of a spall guard. Your plate carrier is not enough. It will catch some, but it's not really designed to catch it. And you can see plenty of videos testifying to that fact. The other thing, too, to bear in mind here, guys, with different cuts, there is less protection. There is less protection with that swimmer's cut compared to the shooter's cut. I get a lot better mobility out of this. This is still covering the vital organs in the place insofar as I'm taking a direct on impact on that plate. If a projectile comes in like that, gets behind my plate, well, life and death. Those are realities out there. Same thing, side plates, stuff like that. They only cover so much. There are only so many things that you can do. And we like to have a good, healthy sense of reality when we discuss these topics here. Will steel armor get you killed? My position is, statistically speaking, probably not. It'll probably be something else that gets you killed in a combat warfare situation. Your plate will probably be a low factor in that capacity. Bleeding out from an arterial wound is more likely to get you than a piece of fragmentation off of these plates. especially again if you've taken the precautions to get a buildup or get a spall liner. So that's kind of the video on this. Again, guys, remember, angles are a thing. Mitigate your risks as much as you can, as far as making sure that you're adding protective layers on these things. And likewise, guys, trauma pads underneath there. You got to have those trauma pads under there, because you do get a little deformation on these things. And you get it with ceramic too. So even with some of these modern body armors that are coming out, you still need the trauma pad systems in there. Again, I use the swimmer's cut, or whatever AR500 want to call it these days. Get better mobility, but I recognize that there's increased risk, because there is a smaller degree of protection when we talk about it. If we stick this thing on here, you can see that there is a significant difference in coverage. Whether or not that'll make a difference, nobody knows until, well, something happens. So guys, don't get all panicky when people start, wigging out about spalling and fragmentation. If you put the right measures in place, steel plates are, statistically speaking, in my opinion, probably just as safe as any other option out there. Again, they all have their ups and downs, pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. Some armor is better than no armor. Just, again, don't run raw steel like Target steel. And if you are going to run a base coat, remember that base coat, it'll catch some fragmentation, but that's not really what it's designed for. It's designed to protect the plate. Get the buildup, get a spall liner. This is tactical Scorpion gear spall liner that I've been using. They've got built-in trauma pads in the back. They're not that expensive. I would strongly recommend that if you're running just, base coat steel armor, to get that extra protection there, to make sure that, if something does happen, that little bit of a layer might make the difference between you having some discomfort in your face, neck, arms, and or groin. Because when these things hit, you get stuff that goes up, you get stuff that goes sideways, you get stuff that goes that way, stuff goes down, and then stuff that comes back. And hopefully nothing that goes through. You'll get some debris. Again, the buildup should catch a lot of that, but once that buildup starts failing, or if you don't have buildup, and this stuff goes fast. So make sure, again, guys, that you've got those things in place. Don't be afraid of steel. Just respect it. And the same thing goes with any other type of armor on the market. Respect what it can do, what it can't do, and understand that there is the possibility that you've got a lemon on your kit, and you won't know until it's a lemon and you find out. So again, all those tests are out there on YouTube. They're helpful. They're interesting. They're very extreme circumstances. Again, especially, when you start talking 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds into a plate and all this stuff is just blowing off. It's not an accurate real world depiction, again, unless you've been, I don't know, out in the field just kind of wearing fluorescent orange and just taking shot after shot after shot on your plate to show off or something. But so the truth about steel armor, will it get you killed? Statistically, you're more likely to die from something else. and that's just the realities of war, LARPing, whatever it might be. And then as always, the disclaimer here, like, we're never encouraging anybody to engage in any kind of offensive or violent behavior or anything like that nature. What we're asking people to do is protect themselves, to be a defense-minded individual in these capacities. That's what body armor is. It's there to protect you. It's a defensive measure. Don't be afraid of steel, guys. Just, again, respect it, understand it, and you should be good. So that's going to wrap up this video, which went way longer than I thought it was going to. But questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, put them in there. Have a discussion in that little area there. Be kind of respectful to each other or whatever, because YouTube likes that. The next video that I'm planning to put up, I don't know when it will be. It might be tomorrow, might be 3 months from now, might be a year from now. I'm going to talk about fire teams, and not necessarily tactics, but poor civilian platform considerations, recognizing that, most of us do not have a saw. most of us do not have some kind of grenade launching systems. Most of us have semi-automatic platforms, and the challenges that come with that, and the realities of, hey, a lot of us guys, we aren't running Daniel Defense. We're not running, Bravo Company. We're running Rugers and PSAs and Smith & Wessons, and, we're classy pours. That's the nature of the beast. So that's going to be the next video, kind of talking about some of those platform considerations, what you and your group of buddies are doing out there. You all running the same platform. You're trying to get some variation in caliber sizes because, these things can do different things in the field. As far as concrete block and brick, and are you going to have to deal with hard structures? Do you need the velocity in the woods? All of these kinds of fun things we'll talk about at some point later on. Sorry for an almost 30-minute video, guys, but again, hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, God bless you guys. Stay safe, rock on, and stay free, and we'll see you with the next video when that comes out. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.